Hello everyone, welcome to the JK Academy. This channel aims to talk about architecture and urban design in the most simplest way. So if you're interested, please subscribe to my channel. Today I will be talking about Edo, Tokyo. Here is the content of my lecture today. I will first begin with introduction to Edo, which means Tokyo, and then followed by Edonomy, which is about Edo economy. Lastly, about Edology, which is about the Edo ecology. Edo is Tokyo before the capital city moved from Kyoto. Edo period started from 1603 and then it lasted until 1868. The date that it ended varies according to different interpretation, but I will keep this date 1868 as the period that it ended. So it lasted for 265 years. Before we move on, I'm going to explain a little bit about the background of Japan during the 16th century. In 16th century Japan, there were three types of classes. One is the aristocrats, the other one is samurai, and then the third one are the people who are living there, so they are the residents. Inside the aristocrat, you had the imperial family. The role of the samurai was to protect a certain area, a territory, with the feudal lord. So in Japan at that moment, we had different territories, small territories all over the country, and then in each of the territory you had the feudal lord, and then the feudal lord, they would hire a samurai to protect the area together. And then so the top of the samurai, they are called the shogun. And then depending on different periods, sometimes the shogun, they took over also the political power. So in 16th century, we had this famous person called Hideyoshi. He was also a samurai, but he wasn't a shogun, but he was taking over a political power. And so therefore he had a lot of people who were, a lot of samurais were following under him. And then one of them was this person who is the founder of Tokyo. He's called Ieyasu. So Ieyasu, he was a samurai working under Hideyoshi, who had the political power. But during this period, there were a lot of battles going on because it was a period of 100 years of civil war. And Hideyoshi, he was gaining a lot of power because he was actually quite strong. And then he was, in fact, he was showing his also power in terms of leadership. And then therefore, Hideyoshi, he was a little bit afraid that perhaps he might threaten Hideyoshi. So in order to kind of give a sort of like a reward to his work that he has been doing, in a way it was kind of like a punishment, or it was some kind of a gesture to show that Hideyoshi was afraid of Ieyasu. He gave a land to Ieyasu as a kind of reward, but this land was 450 kilometers away from Kyoto. Kyoto is the capital city where he was residing, and then he wanted Ieyasu to be away from Kyoto. So he gave a land, and then this land was actually not so habitable. It was quite a terrible land, and but because it's kind of like a reward from Hideyoshi, and it's also a kind of a order for him to actually take over this land, and then he had to rule. He had to reside, and then he had to rule over this territory that was given by Hideyoshi. So that is the kind of background, how Ieyasu started to establish his city in Edo, which was far away from Kyoto, but it was a very bad land where you had a lot of flooding going on because it was a wetland, it was a marshland, and so you had a lot of flooding going on there, and so it was not a very easy place to live. However, Ieyasu, he had a vision. So the story of Edo begins with Ieyasu's vision. So the land of Edo at that moment, it was marshland, it was wetland, it was flooding a lot. But and then it was far away from Kyoto. However, Ieyasu, he thought that being away from the capital city was actually quite convenient in a way, because you can be away from this political power that Hideyoshi had. And then therefore he thought that it was actually an opportunity for him to do the things that he wanted to do. Also, in terms of the land, which was extremely terrible with a lot of flooding, he thought that maybe he can establish something with his own vision to coexist with nature. So the vision that he had, so this 3 cycle means that I believe that if you have the vision, you have economy, and then that all of this has been materialized, visualized into space, then you create a culture. So Ieyasu is one of these examples. I think that he was able to complete these 3 circles. And the vision that he had was that if the land is so bad, then he thought that he could actually provide something that of using the potential of the flooding, or using the potential of being a lot of water there. He thought that he could create a city that is based on water. So that was one of the vision that he had, because water, it means a good transportation system. So if you were able to actually establish a good river, a canal system, then in fact it could lead to economy. So this is one of the reasons why he thought that the marshlands, they were not a negative part, but it could actually be turned into a potential. The other thing is that he also created different ways to generate economy. So this one I'm going to explain later on. And then also he established a city that grew to become a 1 million city, which was the largest in the world at that time. And so with these 3 circles, he also created culture. And then later on in my lecture, you will start to understand how these things are being related. And moving on to exactly what Ieyasu started to do. The name of Ieyasu is Tokugawa Ieyasu. So the period of Edo is governed by the Tokugawa shogunate. So this shogunate system is a feudal military government of Japan, and during the Edo period from 1603, and it lasted 1868. And it started from this person, the first Tokugawa shogun, who is Ieyasu. And then there are mega civil engineering project that he did in order to establish the foundation of what we have of current city of Tokyo today. So I can identify into 6 projects. The first one is a big work for a levee work, and the second one is a construction of moat. And then the third one, this Dosanbori, is a canal. So he also created a lot of small canals. And then he also created dams for providing water, fresh water for the people. And then the fourth one is about the land reclamation. The fifth one is about the route that connects different cities to Tokyo. And then the sixth one, which was actually completed not in his time, but it completed in the 3rd Tokugawa period. But it was an aqueduct that brought fresh water down to the city when the population started to grow. So I would say that this one is not really done by him, but actually it should belong to this the work of Ieyasu, because he was the one who initiated at the very beginning. So I'm going to explain one by one each of the projects. The first one is about the levee work. Tokyo's 5,000 years ago, you can see from this map on the left, this one shows how it was a wetland, it was a marshland, and slowly in 1,000 years back from today, it started to form a river like this. And 500 years ago, actually there was someone who was living here. The first person who was living here 500 years ago, it was Ota Dokan, and then he was the first one to establish the primitive Edo castle, which was in 1457. And from the image here you can see that it is very, very primitive. And in this small village, there were only around 50 to 100 houses. So it's a very, very small village. And you can see from the state here that it was quite a swampy area. Therefore, if you don't raise your land, then you will have the water entering everywhere. So from this, you can also imagine how this area was not really a livable area. And the fact that Ieyasu, when he saw this, he thought that he would have to do a lot of work to that. But this for him was actually a chance, an opportunity to change things. So the first thing that he did is the levee work. In the Edo period, he moved to Edo in 1590. So during the 1590, it was still in this state, and then when he saw it, he thought that the river that was flowing from these mountain areas to Tokyo, Tokyo is located here, and then here this is the Tokyo Bay. So you can see from this diagram that all the water, it flows into the bay. So this is why Tokyo area will be flooded. The Edo area will be flooded. So one of the things that he wanted to challenge was to kind of bend the river so that it flows to the east. Instead of flowing the river to the bay area, it bends and then it will flow to this side. So this was one of these huge mega civil engineering work that he did in order to control the amount of water that flows inside the Edo city. So this is the image of Edo Castle. Please remember that there are a lot of these canals that are running here, because this is one of the things that he did, which leads to the second point of construction of the moat. So this Edo castle, it was a huge castle, but when he moved in during 1590, it was in this very primitive state, and then he said that instead of building a castle immediately, he preferred to actually do more of a construction work to establish bases for the city to develop. So this is the end product of the castle itself, but when he moved in 1590, it wasn't like this. He was a samurai, but then he was actually living in a very primitive castle, and he prioritized in the work for the establishment of the city for the residents instead of his house, which was the castle. So the first thing that he made is the construction of the moat. The construction of the moat was actually one of a service work by the samurais. So the samurais, this is the map of Japan with different territories, and then all of these territories you will have the feudal lord, and then there are the samurais, and then therefore they take their pride in order to show their loyalty to the shogun. So this was actually a part of a military service in a way, where all these different territory, they are called the daimyos. These daimyos, they took their pride in doing this construction work for Ieyasu. So these are the moats that were being constructed, and then each of the feudal lords took in charge of different places. So in the photo, it's very very difficult to see, but and then also in reality it's difficult to see, but you will find a very faint mark which represents the different family, the different lord, the feudal lords, who were in charge of different location, and then those the sign of the symbol of their house are being engraved in the rocks, in each of the rocks. So if you have the chance to see this moat closely, try to find the symbol from the different feudal lords, and then you can discover which one of the rock will be representing the different family. So this is one of the things that he established using the power of the samurai. This is a map during the 1844 to 1848. In this map, it shows how the river expanded, and the map here, you have to read it with the north this way. So it means that the river, there's a mountain there, and then you have the river flowing this way. And then this is where Ieyasu was living. This was the Edo castle. And then from the map, it's easy to understand that it is forming, the moat they have been constructing, forming a spiral manner. So here is the center with the castle. You can see how it goes in a spiral way. And this is the bay. He also uses the bay area, and then it expands outwards like this. So the idea of the spiral was so that, imagining that if Tokyo will, or if Edo will grow larger, he thought that the spiral kind of form of constructing the moat would be very easy for adapting to the population. So if the population will grow larger, then you would just expand it in the spiral way outwards. So that was the idea behind it. And then you can see also these small different kind of canals. So all of these things were being established and then constructed by Ieyasu with the vision of Ieyasu to make it more of a river-based city. So it's a bit like Venice, and it's a bit like Amsterdam. So using this potential of the wetland. The third project that he did was the construction of the Dosanbori and the dams. This image here is the state when it started before he moved in. So in 1590 he created this Dosanbori, and then this Dosanbori was actually to create a shortcut so that the goods can be delivered easily from this bay area to the castle. So here you will see later on why he had to make this thing, because actually later on you will understand why, but it was efficient for him to create this shortcut, because most of the ship that there will be the hub of the location of the port will be located here, and then therefore when the goods were being delivered from all over the country, then you will have this port here, and then you can deliver, or you can distribute the goods very easily directly to the city and then directly to the castle. Here you can see small glimpse of the river that expands to this side. This way they had the salt production to the eastern part here. And then, so actually this river, this canal is extending to the east where they had the salt production happening. And then they will also deliver the salt directly using the river. And then also using this shortcut, you will have the goods being delivered to the castle. The other one is the dam. So the dam is necessary for the people, and then therefore he also created a lot of dams. This image here is because during this period we do not have photos, and then therefore the only way to understand the life there was being represented through this printing work that is called ukiyo-e, and then this is one of the also the culture that we have in Japan. I will be showing different sceneries of Edo using this ukiyo-e. So this one is showing the Dosanbori, and then here you can see this is the dam. It's not a kind of dam that you imagine to be. It's more of a reservoir. So these dams, they will be usually located next to the moat. The fourth one is the Hibiya land reclamation. So if you see this image here, you understand why he created this Dosanbori, because he had this vision of doing the land reclamation work. This area here was a bay, and it was a bay, and then he decided, and then right next to this you had the castle. So people might think that it could be more efficient to locate the port here, but he thought that if you do this, then it means it's too close to the castle, and then therefore when there might be some attack from the enemies, then it will be also very easy for the people to actually arrive here and then attack the castle, which is right next to it. So he thought that this area should be protected by the reclamation work, and so he landfilled the area, and then he created a residential area for the samurais, and then mostly for the other people, the citizens of Tokyo. So this is the image of this Hibiya land reclamation work. And here in this image, in this diagram, you can see he also created different canals to have more the efficiency in terms of the transportation system. So this area was the hub of all the transportation. All the goods were being delivered to the port, and then therefore it means that this was actually the entrance to Edo. This is called Nihonbashi, and then it still exists today. Nihonbashi, it looks something like this. You have the gate, and then you have the bridge, which is called Nihonbashi, and then you will enter into the city of Edo. Nihonbashi is a bashi, it means bridge. So in Japan, you have different locations with something bashi. It means that there is something, that location is related to bridge. So Nihonbashi is a symbol of the starting, or like the entrance to the Edo city. And this is, in terms of the symbol, it still exists. These three images shows the evolution of Nihonbashi bridge. It started off from the wooden bridge, but it keeps on burning down, so they replaced it with a stone constructed bridge, which still exists today. So Nihonbashi was a gateway to Edo, and then it still remains as a gateway for Tokyo today. And so how do you understand this? Is that actually the Nihonbashi is the 0 point of Tokyo. And what do I mean by this? So let's say that you are you are in somewhere else in Japan, and then you are driving the motorway, entering to Tokyo, and then along the way you will see signboards saying 100 kilometers to Tokyo, or like 50 kilometers more to Tokyo. So how do you measure the distance of this 100 kilometers or 50 kilometers? The 0 point, therefore, is Nihonbashi. So when you are standing on the bridge, you will be standing on the 0 spot of Tokyo. This image here it's actually covered by expressway. This expressway was constructed for the Tokyo Olympic game held in 1964. So it was built in 1963, And unfortunately it's covering over the Nihonbashi Bridge, which is supposed to signify the gateway to Tokyo. But the news is that this will be demolished, this expressway will be demolished, and then it will go underground. And so in the near future, you will see Nihonbashi, the bridge. If you're standing there, you will be able to see the sky in the near future. The fifth project that he did is called Kaido. Kaido, it means routes. So he established 5 routes. So these are the 5 routes that are connecting to Edo. Edo is this spot here, and then here is Kyoto. So around the distance between Edo and Kyoto is around 450 to around maybe 500 kilometers away. So you can understand how long these distances. And then along the way, there were different towns that were emerging because during the way to the journey to go from one place to another, you need to stay in different places because you are walking, and then therefore it contributed also in terms of emergence of new towns. But this I will explain later on in detail. The 6th project is the Tamagawa Aqueduct, which completed in 1653. So this aqueduct was not completed during Ieyasu period. It was completed during the 3rd Tokugawa shogun period. But Ieyasu, he was the one who initiated. It was the objective was to supply drinking water and then firefighting water for the people here who are living in the city area. So Tama River, which is the river that runs here, they have created a new waterway that actually leads to the city area. So the reason why they did this is because the population was growing, and then they needed to secure fresh water. And then the water system here was not enough, and then therefore they created the new waterway. This is around 43 kilometers long. And then if you see also the topography of Tokyo area, you understand that here, this area, which is this Tama area here, it's higher up, it's a mountain area, and then slowly you go down, and then you will have the flat areas that are here, which are around here. So this is the castle, and this is the castle here. The river here that is shown in this diagram is equivalent to this river here. So you understand from this image that the Hibiya area, which is here, this is the place that he did the land reclamation work, is flat. And then as you go more to the west, then you have the topography. So the Tokyo is very, very much blue infrastructure based. Edo is a very much a blue infrastructure based city, almost like Amsterdam, and then equivalent to also Venice. The difference, the big difference, is that Amsterdam and Venice, they are quite flat. But Tokyo, it used also the topography to create a flow of water, so that the fresh water actually can flow down to the city area. But the problem comes when it reaches to the flat area here. How can you actually make a natural flow of water so that in the flat area there will also be water flowing? So they created a waterway system which looks something like this in terms of section. So in this area it's fine because they are using the gradient, natural topography to flow the water. Here when it comes to this area, it goes down to the underground. So this is actually a section of below ground, and then they are using a water pressure to pump up the water so that even in the flat areas you have the water that will be flowing. Eventually this system will reach to a well. So this is the well. It looks something like this, and then in the well it will reach to the residential area. So this image here, it shows a typical neighborhood block in the flat areas, the residential areas. So this block here, you can see there is a waterway that leads here, and then it reaches to the well, and then the well, around the well, you will have a lot of activities happening. So it's not only for drinking, but you will do washing, and then you will use this fresh water for cooking as well. So a lot of people, they will gather around this area, around the well. So you will be these people, they will be communicating, and then also it establishes a community, a sense of community for this neighborhood. So that was also another social function for the well. So to conclude this introduction, I will show the evolution of the population growth in Edo. So it started from 60,000 or so. It started from 50 to 100 houses at the very beginning, before Ieyasu arrived. When Ieyasu arrived in 1590, he also brought his men, and then therefore at the very beginning, they had around 60,000 people who were living to start off the city. In the early 17th century, already it grew to become 150,000. But this is still less than compared to London and Paris. In the mid 17th century, it grew to be 400,000. So this is almost equivalent to London. But in the 18th century, it grew even more, and then it became a 1 million city, and it was the largest in the world at that time. So moving on to the next one, I'm going to talk about the economy and then also about the ecology of Edo.